Welcome back to another episode of Foolproof Theology. It's good to be with you here today. If you're watching on YouTube, you probably have noticed that I got a new setup, and I wanted to give a special shout out to all my patrons who have supported the program and continue to support the program. I've got about 100 people signed up over on the Patreon right now, which is wonderful, and I'd love it if you can sign up and continue to support the show. You can head over to the show notes there, but it's great. We've got a light in my room. My wife's going to try to help me with some decor behind me. I don't know if the messy bookshelves on YouTube are that good, but using my iPhone to record, and so I think this looks much better. People were saying that it looked like I had some kind of liver disease in my other videos, so hopefully this is more enjoyable on YouTube. If you're on audio, you really don't care. I'm using the same mic, so it doesn't really matter to you, but sign up on the Patreon today. I also wanted to, before we get into the content today, I wanted to let you know about a conference coming up this summer, August 1st and 2nd in Boulder. It's at the church I'm a pastor of, and it's a conference called Burn the Ships. We did this last year. It was a great time. It was actually funny. Last year, we hadn't moved into our building yet, and so we were scrambling last minute to find a space. Thankfully, a local church opened up to us, and we held our conference there. We had myself, Matt Patrick, Brian Brown, and Colin Redimer last year, and that was a great time. We had guys drive in, fly in, and it was a wonderful time. And so it's a Friday and a Saturday, August 1st and 2nd. You can head over to boulderwell.org/burntheships. And this year we're bringing out Michael Clary, Michael Foster, and Doug Ponder to come speak at the conference. Still working on kind of themes and what they're going to talk about, but the theme is Burn the Ships. So we give them free reign to say whatever they want. In fact, we've offered to not even record it if that would be more freeing to them to speak their mind. And so I'd love to see you there. If you're a listener to the program, head over to boulderwell.org/burntheships, sign up, register today. We've got early bird pricing available for a little while longer, so you want to take advantage of that. I think it's a great ticket price, $75. It's not that bad, especially in the Christian conference world. So that includes food, drink for the 2 days you're with us, and we'd love to have some fellowship with you and meet you in person. So head over to boulderwell.org/burntheships. Today on the program, I want to talk about something that I actually talked about with our church a few weeks ago at something we have called Theology on Tap. We have this quarterly to discuss all sorts of issues that come up either in culture, theology, or life that we can't get to in a Sunday morning sermon. And so we've covered everything from aliens and UFOs to the patriarchy to all sorts of matters at Theology on Tap. It's really fun. We've had debates at Theology on Tap in the past with atheists. And so it's supposed to be a lively conversation on matters related to everyday life, but from a Christian perspective. And we bring in guest speakers. We'll talk about Revelation, eschatology, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, with that said, we actually talked about social media. And I thought I'd share some of that with you. I'm going to do a little bit of not a dumbed down version. You're smart people that listen to my program. But I wanted to do a version that's more curtailed to you. And the way I want to frame it is borrowing a term from Orrin McIntyre. He calls Twitter, for example, the digital coliseum. The digital coliseum. What does he mean by this? He means that when you get on Twitter, it's typically a place for fighting. And so if you're somebody that was ever into the Enneagram and you said, I'm an Enneagram 9, then you're going to hate Twitter. It's not going to be a place you enjoy. And it's really a place for sparring. Now, we'll talk about the ethics of that a little bit in this episode. But just framing the conversation that way, I want to start with how should Christians engage, especially online? How should we think about it? And what we want to get to eventually is thinking about two things that come up. One is tribalism. People accuse people online of being tribal and behaving in a tribal manner. And the second is living in an echo chamber. I want to talk about that. There's also something that kind of centrist evangelicals, gospel coalition types have started using called brain rot for people that are online too much. And we might touch on that a little bit, but it's typically just a spurious accusation that they use because they disagree with somebody, which, it's their call, but that's just how it is. So I want to build kind of a theology of communication, which may seem odd to most of us. We typically don't think about this. This isn't a, topic in systematic theologies. Typically, they don't have a theology of communication. They have one on Revelation. But theology of communication, I want to make the case for why we should engage. Well, first of all, we are made for communication. We were made for relationship. We're made to be in relationship with other people and to have kind of common life together. This is part of our human design. We are created for connection, and communication is a natural outflow of that. Communication was pre-fall, so we know that communication was something that God created. In fact, God is the author, the storyteller, as some people say, the writer of the story of redemption. And so communication is something inherent to God, that He reveals Himself over and over. And as we are made in His image, we too are communicative beings. We communicate as well. And so that's a natural outflow of that. Not only that, but we see that in the garden, Adam was made priest. He was the head of Eve. Eve was made from his side. And so we see that there's actually a kind of duty and role in communication, that Adam had certain responsibilities in communicating to Eve, and Eve had certain responsibilities in communicating to Adam. And that was taken advantage of. The whole thing was flipped in Genesis 3 at the fall, where now the creation is communicating to the woman, who's communicating to the head, who's communicating to God, instead of the other way around. And so with that, with communication, we have basic gender differences in how people communicate. Men and women communicate differently. And so if men communicate in typically a more assertive, they're not afraid of being combative. They're not afraid of just saying what they think. Most often, women are less likely to do that. They're more kind of go around the conflict, and they'll engage in different ways of communication. And both have different priorities. For most men, it's clarity, it's boldness, it's getting after the truth. And for women, it's making sure people feel heard and included. To think about a typical difference between a guy's small group and a girl's small group at a church, guy's small group, they typically don't mind, arguing about stuff, having dialogues about all sorts of stuff that may not even pertain to a Bible study or something like that. While women are concerned with, like, does everybody feel welcome? And so these are going to affect how people communicate differently. Not only that, but with communication over time, we have technology that comes with communication, because communication is fundamental to human existence and being a human. That comes with technological advances. And so you can think of the Gutenberg press. All of a sudden you've got mass literature available to the public and Bible translations, and people are getting killed for making Bible translations. And so you have different forms of communication over time. A lot of times when we think of people before the Gutenberg press, we think of them as dumb, and they weren't dumb. They were actually very brilliant many times. They just had different ways of communicating, because technology was not what it is today in their time. And in some ways that was better for them intellectually and socially. So they had to sit down and like write a letter or use papyrus to write things. And they had to think about what they were going to write and put it down. And then over time, that developed into mass publication, where more people had access to communication and could communicate more freely. You had the invention of telegrams, and then telephones, where people could communicate. And then we have the internet. And that was a really not just a technological revolution, but a communication revolution, where people could engage over the internet with words. And now we have video and content like this where we can communicate. But that really changed the game. The internet, from what I understand, in its original form, was actually a forum for academics to discuss ideas, share articles and journals, and give feedback. And now it's evolved where everybody's connected online and anybody can interact with anybody for the most part. And so now we have emails, we have texts, we have social media, and we have all these forms of communication, and each one demands a certain way of communicating. You wouldn't communicate typically in a text in the same way that you would communicate with an email. And same thing with social media. Now, we're not going to get into AI. AI is another topic we've talked about on the show with C.R. Wiley. You can go listen to that episode. But AI creates its own challenges with technology. And in general, Christians have been adopters of technology and users of technology. It hasn't been something we've shunned. There are certain sects in Christianity, like the Amish or others, who have shunned technology and the advances of technology. But even then, they still create certain carve-outs in their culture. But in general, many people today are familiar with the internet and communicate via the internet. And so this is going to shape how we communicate today. Now, as a Christian navigating social media, one of the things the reason I wanted to address this is because most of the stuff coming out in evangelicalism on social media is actually unhelpful and is meant to kind of squash dissent from what they're saying. So they're going to use a lot of fear mongering. They're going to talk about how scary it is out there, how harmful, all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to take that tact. I just want to encourage you to engage prudently. And so what we want to talk about with social media is it permissible? I think it is permissible. It's not a matter of law, although it may be for you personally. If for some reason, you struggle with a certain emotional incapacity to engage in a Christ-like manner online, then yeah, maybe it's not permissible for you. But in general, we've said it's permissible to engage in social media. So if it is permissible, how should Christians engage? This kind of goes back to a lot of conversation about winsomeness. This was a hot topic in 21, 22, especially online. And I've written on that and talked about that before. But winsomeness was kind of this glaze that was cast over many Christians to believe that how we communicate should always have what they kind of coined winsome witness. It should be always viewed as like this Mr. Rogers approach to anyone. That's how we should be both perceived, and that's how what we should aim for in our communication. I obviously dissent from that. I view that as a permissible tactic. I'm just admitting that it is a tactic. That is a strategy you can use and deploy it at will whenever you want. But you don't only have to do that. The Winsome Witness crowd, what they did is they baptized their strategy as if it's the Bible. And that's really unfortunate because you're seeing the same stuff today with like Wheaton and DEI. A lot of secular institutions are getting rid of DEI, but Wheaton is holding on to DEI. And many other Christian places are doing this. And the reason that's difficult is because once you baptize an ideology into the Christian faith, it becomes very difficult to take it out. It's going to be very painful to take it out. And so it's the same thing with kind of being a winsome Christian. They've taken one strategy and made it all of the strategies, and any other strategy is not welcome. And it just so happens to map on perfectly with kind of liberalism. We might get into that in the episode later. And so my point being, if you're going to engage in social media, you should be prudent. If you're going to be winsome and be great at it. But also don't discount the fact that there's other tools. You can be polemical, you can fight, you can argue, you can disagree, you can meme, you can troll. All these things are actually permissible. Now, you could argue about, how they're used and that kind of thing. But the point is, they are permissible. There's nothing really unbiblical about those approaches. One of the things that comes up with online communication specifically is anonymous accounts, or what people call anons or pseuds. I think anons are absolutely justified in some cases. Sometimes they're not, but I think there's a permissibility for anons, and many pastors out there don't like anons for some reason. I think anons are justified, especially given some career risks that people take if they're going to get online and say things publicly. That could really hamper their ability to provide for their family. And so there's also personal safety considerations. Think about a Christian in a foreign country where Christianity is outlawed and they want to get online and connect with other Christians globally. It may be prudent for them to engage with an anon account. Anonymous literature and anonymous communication, kind of pseudographs, go back in our history, especially in Western civilization. So it's not something that Christians have ever said, you cannot do this. It's more of a matter of wisdom and guidance. And so there could be a case for why you shouldn't be anon. Perhaps you're behaving in a way that's radically inconsistent with your faith. And in that case, you can kind of have a split personality where you're engaging in an anon account, you have one, and it really doesn't track with who you are in real life. And so that can be dangerous, but I don't really concern myself with that. If I see anons that are either crazy or unhinged or anything like that, it's just I mute them or block them. It's not a big deal to me. Another thing that comes up online is I've noticed a lot of people lurk online. This is an interesting behavior pattern that a lot of people have. And I'm not saying I don't do it either. I think everyone kind of lurks online. They're scrolling, they're looking up people, they're seeing what people are saying, but they're not engaging. And that's really kind of creepy, honestly. It's weird behavior. I think constant passive observation is just creepy. You can do that. I'm not saying it's wrong. It is permissible to lurk, but I do think it kind of creates this weird thing where you start pigeonholing people. Like I've had people in my life come up to me who have been apparently lurking on my account for years, and then all of a sudden they have 3 years of bitterness in their heart against me because of something I said one time. And then when I ask them, what did I say? They can't even remember. And so it can depersonalize things when you lurk online too much. You kind of forget to be tethered to God and to others. And so I would say don't make it a habit. I would actually engage with people online. And I would say kind of lurking behavior is actually symptomatic of somebody who's scared, who's somebody who's afraid to share their ideas, or maybe just hasn't been trained to share their ideas wisely. And so I wouldn't make that a habit. Kind of going into different platforms. and this is where I'm trying to provide better wisdom than's being offered to many Christians today. I think with any social media platform, it's going to have a different culture and different expectations. So think about, if you walk into a concert where they've got a mosh pit, it's heavy metal concert. I've never been to this. I know some friends have. And you go to this and people are, hitting each other, pushing each other, and this kind of stuff is happening. Well, that's the norm there. I'm not saying it's good or bad. That's just the norm. And if you show up to that thinking it's going to be like a peaceful dinner, a romantic date night with your wife, this is not going to go well for you. And so you need to understand what kind of communication you're engaging with online. For a lot of people, they kind of behave very ignorantly when they engage online. They think everything should be the same. Everything should be kind of a winsome witness and kind of a glossy, matte finish. And so I wanted to provide a short breakdown of just, if you're a Christian, you're like, I want to know more about this and how to engage and what to expect. I think Twitter, you have to X now, you have to think of it as a place not for polite discussions. Often the discussions are sharp and combative. It's rare that you're going to see a long Twitter exchange go well. And so if you're getting into a long Twitter exchange, it's probably too late for you. That's typically unwise, unless there's certain cases where it could be very good and useful for people to sharpen ideas and that kind of thing. But typically you're looking to like attack or react or engage in a thought that maybe you disagree with and hopefully challenge. And so I think that's what there's a huge opportunity on X for that, is to really shape kind of not just your own thoughts, but other people's thoughts. This is part of the reason I got on Twitter in 2020, is I wanted to see what all these kind of big Eva types that I know them as now were actually saying on Twitter. And it turns out they were saying honestly what they thought on Twitter about a lot of different matters. And I was like, well, this is good to know. And I've recommended these people's books to my people in my church and my friends and my family. I think I'm just going to disagree with them on this matter publicly in order to kind of show like, hey, I disagree with this. And if you're following this person because we recommended them in the past, like, I don't think this is a good idea. And so Twitter's very useful for that. Twitter's also very useful for finding friends. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Facebook is typically what people go to for family updates. It's very kind of normie discussions. It's pictures of, hey, my kid graduated. Oh, look, homecoming. Oh, look, my high school reunion, or funny jokes or observations about the world. I was doing a bit of a test last week because I typically won't put on Facebook what I put on Twitter, because I understand there's different contexts and different expectations. I've had to learn that the hard way, unfortunately, because I didn't realize that early on. But I wanted to kind of flip it this past week. And so I started putting some things I put on Twitter on Facebook, and it was hilarious because people on there did not receive it well. Many people did not receive it well when I said pastors should not be effeminate. Just single line, send it, put it on Facebook. And that's not going to go well typically on Facebook. A lot of people liked it, shared it. It was fun, but it was kind of me testing the waters. They were like, is this my hypothesis about Facebook true? I believe it to be true. Now, you can break these rules. These aren't hard and fast rules. I'm just giving you kind of what to expect. Instagram, if you get on there, it's typically going to be more aesthetic focus, more picture quality, reels, lifestyle content, all that kind of stuff. If you're getting on there to kind of like, engage and like combat in the comments, not going to go well. The comment section on Instagram can be hilarious, but typically it's not like Twitter. TikTok, I think it's run by the Chinese government, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, even though I have Christians that I know that are on it, and I guess it can be good, but it's for mass entertainment. It's very quick videos. I think there could be an opportunity there, but I'm not going to participate in that. Truth Social, I'm not on that. I might have an account I started in 2020, but I haven't gone on in a while. Truth Social is basically like, Donald Trump's platform. If TikTok is the way for the Chinese government to spy on you, then Truth Social is the way for Donald Trump to spy on you. And you can get on there, and I'm sure you can meet a lot of great people. Gab is a platform that I'm on. I don't really use it that often. I do follow some people on there, but it's predominantly like right wing. They really pride themselves on being like really, really hardcore on free speech. So I just like recently, like France, the country of France, was like asking them to disclose their user base, and Gab was like, "No, we're not doing that," which I really respect. So Gab is that way. There's another platform that recently came online. You're seeing a lot of liberals leave Twitter and go to this thing called Blue Sky, and that place is crazy. It's very liberal. It's designed for liberals, and so I don't want anything to do with that. I'm good, but you could get on Blue Sky, I guess, if you want to see what liberals are thinking. And then Reddit is even worse. Reddit's largely leftist, and it's for hyper online culture. A lot of deranged people on there, a lot of attacking Christians on there. And at this point, there's actually a lot of evil stuff on there in terms of death threats and that kind of thing under the new Trump regime. So my point in bringing all this up is that you need to know your context before engaging. If you're going to be prudent about how you engage, you should know your context. Online and communication in general, there's some objections to why we should engage online or if we should engage online. Um, the one of the big ones is like that online discourse is inherently bad and should be abandoned for real life. And I just want to say online discourse is real life. Like you will answer to the Lord for every tweet you send and the tweets in your draft folder. And so online is real life. These group chats or whatever you're part of, Telegram, I don't know what you're on, but this is real life. These messages that you're sending, these are you communicating with other people. So yes, there can be times where you should maybe log off, I guess, and go do real stuff. But if I'm having to say that to you, it's probably too late for you. Another one we're going to unpack here in a second is the echo chamber fallacy. And it's a flawed accusation about online discourse. And then third, I would say the biggest one is that it harms our witness. Harming our witness has been the biggest thing why Christians shouldn't engage online. In fact, some churches even have policies in place where their staff and their pastors cannot engage online at all except to post a family picture. And so that's their call. I'm not judging that. That may be prudent in some cases, I suppose. It's obviously not our policy at our church, but the big thinking is that if people saw what we say online out loud, and if people saw what Christians believed and saw this disagreement, then it would turn people off from Jesus. I've actually experienced the opposite, where I've seen a lot of people be interested in Christianity. I've seen people come to our church. And so I think this is a fallacy that's kind of a carryover from the winsome witness thing, where the winsome witness people, they hate the people that are loud and aggressive and assertive about Christianity and like want to, call out sin, both in the church and in the culture. And this is just a carryover from there. They don't want to see any of that stuff online because they come across as embarrassed of Christianity. Like that's how they come across. Like, don't say the quiet part out loud. It'll really undermine our opportunities to reach people. And it's like, stop doing that game. That's how we got into this place as a society, is Christians muting themselves. So I think that's a fallacy. One last thing online, then we're going to get into tribes and echo chambers. Before we dive into that topic, I want to let you know about a great opportunity you have to learn ancient languages. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but in seminary, I absolutely hated taking Greek and Hebrew. There's nothing wrong with my professors. They were wonderful people, but it was so painful. It was so painful to learn all the vocabulary and diagrams. My Hebrew professor tried to spice it up by introducing singing into our Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, but even that was still challenging. Well, I have a friend who runs the Ancient Language Institute, and they offer great programs that are affordable for you to learn ancient languages on your own time. So if you want to kind of up your game in reading and learning ancient languages, and if you listen to the program, I'm assuming you're someone who doesn't mind getting into kind of old dead guy literature. And if you're going to get into that, you're going to need to be familiar with ancient languages. So if you're looking to up your game on this stuff, you need to take a class at the Ancient Language Institute. They offer courses in Latin, Greek, Biblical Hebrew, and Old English, and they offer it to kids and adults. So let's say you have a kid like mine who's not taking Latin right now. This is a great opportunity for them to get Latin. It's a highly flexible schedule. They have live class meetings online over Zoom, and so you can do it all remote. Really, Ancient Language Institute exists to change the way languages are taught. A lot of times when you learn a language, it can be really dry, really rigorous, but not in a good way. You're learning kind of like a lot of the vocabulary up front, a lot of the diagrams, but they don't teach it that way. They use a living language approach, which is very unique, meaning you're going to get into the language from day one. So in Latin, you're going to end up looking and reading Virgil's Aeneid. In Greek, you're going to get into Plato and the Greek New Testament, which is wonderful. I think it's wonderful to get into the Greek New Testament. I wish all Christians could understand how Greek works and how the Bible's written in the original language. But they have courses coming up this summer. You can still sign up today. The summer term registration closes April 19th. So you're going to need to sign up before April 19th to take advantage of the opportunity to learn this living language approach to ancient languages. So you can sign up today at ancientlanguage.com and let them know I sent you. They're a partner of the program. It's 100% money back guarantee, by the way. If you sign up and don't really like the course, then they will give you your money back, which I think is a great deal. But head over to ancientlanguage.com, sign up today, and let them know that I sent you. With online, you can find trolls pretty easily. Trolling is interesting. It both comes from fishing and from Vietnam, where you're laying out a line and you're trying to catch something. So trolling is an effort to catch flack, or highlight something you disagree with. I think trolling is permissible. I'm not saying that you should not block trolls. I have people troll me, and if it's repeated misrepresentation of my views, if it's insults rather than arguments, and it's no real attempt at discussion, then I'm really disinterested in that. And I don't blame people for being disinterested if I troll them. That's fine. The Gospel Coalition blocked me, I think, 2 years ago because I trolled them. And that's fine with me. I don't blame them for that. I think they should open it up again to me. I think that would be fun. I found them in other places anyway. So, yeah, but, there's no rule. I mean, Christians get hung up on this, especially on Facebook. There's no rule when I post on Facebook that when I post and somebody like either insults me, mocks me, or disagrees with me, that their comment has to remain there. I am totally within my right to delete that comment. That is a public platform. And when people like my family see my content on there and see people, publicly disagreeing with me, there's no like duty I have as a Christian to leave that comment up there. I can just delete it. You can just delete people's comments. I don't do that very often. People may think I do it more often, but I actually don't. Sometimes it can be helpful to leave it. It's like, oh, wow, you said it out loud. Thanks for saying that out loud. I'm going to leave this here so other people can see it. Because when you're having these discussions, they're public discussions. People can see your tweets. People can see Facebook engagement typically. You can obviously put some privacy protocols, but you get my point, is that there's ways to engage online with shrewdness and with prudence. And the last thing I'll say about it is a lot of the reasons people get upset with online discourse is based on their preconception of what's permissible to talk about. And so if and this is typically referred to as the Overton window, what's permissible to talk about. If you hear people talking about immigration and how we need to deport illegal immigrants, and all is from Christians for immigration and these organizations that promote immigration within Christianity, you're going to view that as a kind of a third rail topic, so to speak. You're going to say that's not permissible. We can't talk that way. Well, really what you've done is you just kind of built a window into what you think is permissible for Christians to talk about. And so I've had people come up to me say, look, you're radical, you're wild online. And I'm like, you think I'm wild? Like, you should see the other stuff online. It's like you have a very narrow view of what is permissible to talk about. I'm actually very normal. In 1980, I would have probably been considered a liberal with what I talk about online. And so it really comes down to like what you expect of the platform, and then how you think others should engage based on your priors, based on what you assume is acceptable discourse to have publicly. I'm someone that thinks I can talk about a lot of stuff publicly, and that's very permissible for me. It's very freeing to get outside of these kind of winsome witness paradigms where you're not allowed to talk about stuff that may be a dangerous idea. I think that can be very interesting stuff. So let's get into tribes, because this is the one that really is highlighted by, I've mentioned the Gospel Coalition multiple times. I apologize for that, kind of. But the biggest fear that a lot of Christians have is they don't want to be tribal. They don't want to, we shouldn't, it's bad to be tribal, and somehow tribalism is bad. And I want to make the argument that you need a tribe. You need a tribe. Your earliest tribe, the people that you belong to, that shape you, that inform your beliefs, that care for you, is your family. You are formed within a household, and that functions as a tribe. The church itself functions as a tribe. It exists to reinforce truth and strengthen believers. So you could view your church as a tribe. You should have loyalty to your church. You should defend your church. You should participate in your church, and you should be strengthened by your church. This is what a tribe does. Online tribes exist too. Whether you like it or not, you will gravitate towards people who have similar values with you. Like, that's just inevitable part of human life. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, like, I don't know why this isn't so unnerving to some people, but you're going to be attracted and want to be in fellowship with other people who kind of have the same values of you. Now, your values may be wrong, their values may be wrong, but that's just natural human behavior. People are going to get together with people who kind of see the world the same way. I'm not saying that that discounts missions or anything like that. I'm just saying that the natural human proclivity is to find people with shared values. And that's not wrong. That's like God given. That can go wrong, especially if you're pursuing sin, if you're not worshiping God, that can go wrong. But on principle, it's not wrong to find a tribe. In fact, our culture is really like lonely today. And I think what's missing is a lot of this tribal mentality. There's a book that was recently recommended to me by a friend, um, by Sebastian Younger, Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging. And I've just started it, but basically it talks about how when veterans come home from conflict, from war, what's often missing is that feeling of belonging, community, and tribe, where there's kind of like these normal expectations, where there's not just regiment, but community and moving forward on a mission together. And I think a lot of people in the modern world are missing that. They're lonely today. And so, yeah, online tribes exist too. And that's fine. That's permissible. Whether or not you like it, that's going to happen. And we see culture crying out for this. You see, you know, t-shirts and paraphernalia made about how you need to find your squad, or these are my people. This is natural human behavior. And like right wing spaces, it's going to be, you need to find your phalanx. You need to find your people that you're going to defend and fight with. And in more liberal context, you're going to have a tribe like the Gospel Coalition, where we're all just kind of genteel and nice, and we're not going to offend anyone ever. Unless you're to the right of us, then we're just going to dump on you constantly. It's a huge problem over there. I highlight it because, like, if you search the word tribal or tribalism on there, like I think Scotty Smith has like 50 articles that mention tribalism as equivalent to racism. And I'm like, that's wild. And so my point being, you will have a tribe. It's by design. It's one of the greatest fears of the liberal mind, because in the liberal mind, you should be open and inclusive to all. Um, and so what they typically mean by tribalism is somehow you're not open to the truth, or that you just defend your tribe no matter what. And that's not how I'm using it here. I'm just using it in the very common way. You should have a people that you belong to, that you're loyal to, that you will defend, and that you're on mission, or you have a vision for your life together. And they kind of equate it with being a partisan, as if that's bad. You know, that you're, oh, you're just a right winger. They're going to use that word. And it's like, that has no power anymore. These are like magic words they use to try to like bind people's consciences. And so I think you should have loyalty to your friends. You should defend your people. And if corrections need to be made, do your best to make them in house. Conservatives are the worst at this, because they're constantly trying to prove their virtue to the left, which is a bad way to go about your life, because you'll never win that way. If you're constantly kind of either betraying or shanking your own people and giving them over to the left to say, yeah, I guess he's not that good. Here, you can have him. And we feed him to the wolves. I think this is very bad behavior. And so at the very best, you should do corrections in house, but you should be loyal. Loyalty is a virtue. And I think that many people have forgotten that. And you need to be able to distinguish between who are your people and who are not your people. I think this is why so many people are lonely today. There's no kind of communal formation into who my people are. And so you get into thinking that everyone is a potential friend, everyone is a potential opportunity to connect. And instead of, thinking that, hey, we have certain duties to our family, to our church, to our state, to our nation, to our county, whatever it may be, there's kind of this globalizing effect of liberalism, where we can just pretend we can all be friends in our wonderful, beautiful, principled pluralism with no enemies. Turns out that's not true. That's just not true. And so I think it's good to find a tribe. You can do that online. You can find a tribe online. You can roll with them. You can disagree with them. You can have fun. And I don't think that's wrong. Everyone does it already. Like, I'm just saying the quiet part out loud. Like, everybody has a tribe. They have people they follow. They have people they like and celebrate and want to champion, and they'll have their back. That's just natural human behavior. And so don't listen to this scurious accusation that tribalism is somehow bad. That's coming from a weak mind. And the last thing would be, it's kind of related to the echo chamber. So the echo chamber accusation is often used by kind of midwit people. By midwit, I mean people who are like really bought into the general consensus that's being fed to them by culture. People who don't really think deeply. People who have just enough education to think they know something, but not enough to know they know nothing. And so they'll use this accusation of an echo chamber to discredit others. This often came up back in like the 90s and 2000s, where people accused Christians of checking their brains at the door, or the scandal of the evangelical mind, or the atheist typical accusation will be, you just live in an echo chamber. Whereas, of course, the atheist does not live in an echo chamber. He lives outside the echo chamber, which is just ridiculous. And so many people use it as an intellectual weapon to squash dissent or ideas they disagree with. Oh, you just live in an echo chamber. And the accusation, the implication of the accusation is that somehow you're ignorant, you're unread, you're unable to engage with other perspectives, which is just not true most of the time. You just don't like what the other person said, and they're behaving in a tribal manner, and you're behaving in a tribal manner. The reason it works though on so many Christians is they've heard the accusation of living in an echo chamber, and they're like, they know that that falls short of the liberal idea of kind of having an open mind about everything, of being willing to explore all perspectives and giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. And then they've taken that and said the Bible teaches this, and I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think there is a version of that that's taught, but it's become so warped in our day that it's very dangerous. It actually exploits kind of a leftover of the liberal idea, the notion that an enlightened person must entertain every side of a debate forever, endlessly ad nauseum. That somehow like the truly enlightened mind will uncover and explore all sides. So I'll give you an example. This was really championed by for me for like Tim Keller, and the way he conceived of being a pastor and a church planter is that you had to listen to all perspectives. And so I tried it. I got a subscription to the New York Times. You know, I was listening to all sides. I was listening to NPR. I was watching Rachel Maddow, which was painful. I was listening to Ben Shapiro, watching Steven Crowder, reading the Wall Street Journal. I was trying to get all sides, and I was exhausted. I was just like, this is dumb. Like, I don't agree with one side. I more agree with the other. What if I just stop listening to the other side? Not because I don't want to hear their best arguments and know how to like, you know, unpack them and give them kind of a charitable reading and not be able to steel man them, but because it's a waste of my energy. Like, I know what their perspective is at this point. I know how they're going to approach an issue. I know how to steel man their opinions. But all this is kind of like the liberal modern notion of like, we got to be able to debate all sides. You got to always put your enemy in the best light possible. You got to give them the benefit of the doubt. You got to be super charitable with everybody. And you see it break down in the way the right is talked about, especially. The right is always called fascist, Nazi, all this kind of stuff. And so it immediately breaks down because this isn't a true principle that they're operating off of. There are biblical principles we can operate off of, particularly in the church and how we deal with people when Jesus says we should treat people as we want to be treated. But that's a specific context that Jesus is talking to. It's not this kind of globalizing thing where we have no concept of kind of our own finitude and limitedness, where we can't know everything. And so we have to go with what we know. We know Scripture. We believe in Jesus. We're going to follow him, and we're going to listen to people that are smarter than us on issues that we care about. And if that's an echo chamber, so what? I don't need to endlessly steelman abortion. I don't need to endlessly listen to the debates on the good of transgenderism or other modern corruptions. I don't need to spend my time doing that. I know it's wicked. I know it's wrong. I know their perspective, and I know why it's wrong. So like, I don't need to always be listening to the latest NPR show to have that opinion. And likewise, I don't need to always be able to steel man the argument that women could be pastors, or that biblical teaching on men and women and marriage in the home and other places in the church is somehow oppressive. Like, I don't need to like go read the latest literature on both sides of the opinion. That's a waste of my time. It's just nonsense. The truth is that everyone lives in an echo chamber, just like everyone lives in a tribe. And to go back to the family illustration, your original family was your original echo chamber. This is where your values were reinforced, your beliefs were shaped. The church functions as another echo chamber designed for your good, to reinforce good, true beliefs. Modern man resents these kind of natural bonds because they're unchosen. They're not things that you necessarily chose. I mean, obviously you can choose a different church, but in general, you're not going to choose your family, and therefore, in the liberal mind and the modern mind, that is oppressive. If it's unchosen, it's oppressive. But really, no one escapes the echo chamber. The question becomes, which voices are you going to listen to? You need to listen to the voice of God. You need to listen to Scripture. You need to listen to the truth of Scripture. And you need to surround yourself with voices that will edify you based on the truth of Scripture. And so you can participate in a lot of different echo chambers. They're all out there. We saw the social contagion of transgenderism explode because it was like an echo chamber in the academy, and what they were talking about and propagating in schools. It was a giant echo chamber. And that happens. The goal is to defeat them and to argue with them, not to spend endless time doing that. The illustration I like to use is, think of yourself in a cathedral. The reason a cathedral is so beautiful and haunting when people sing is there's an echo in it. it's beautiful. It's like a wonderful symphony. And you go to any kind of symphony in real life, there's a wonderful acoustical experience. And so an echo chamber doesn't have to be the stifling place where we don't explore new ideas. It can be a wonderful time of intellectual engagement with people who are different than you, even though you all have similar commitments. And for me, I'd rather live in a cathedral than live in a brothel, exploring terrible ideas and getting exposed to all sorts of nonsense and wasting a bunch of time trying to give charitable readings to demons. And so that's my take on an echo chamber. So, kind of final takeaway is that you need to curate your online experience. You can find good people to follow and engage with. You can message people, and they're actually very responsive. Lots of people online, especially on X, are very responsive. If you have a question, a disagreement, you can do that. You are free to do that. You don't have to hear all sides of a debate to know something is wrong, but you need to be intentional about who you follow, where you engage, how you're spending your time, and be prudent with how you're spending your time and engage in a way that's consistent and reflects character. I think this is a big topic. I don't think a lot of Christians are getting content like this that is trying to encourage Christians in how to do this wisely, because most of it is very fear-based and scared. And I don't think Christians need to live that way. You will make mistakes online, most likely. Guess what? You can just like delete things and apologize. You can also have people in your life that like know what you're posting and say, hey, you should probably delete that. And you can say, okay, like it's just not a big deal. And so you can take risks, you can do a lot of stuff, and you can find a lot of good people if you just put yourself out there. And so I think all this stuff together, communication, echo chamber, tribalism, I think these are big things that Christians need to talk about, especially Christians on the right. And we need to encourage one another and really, I would say mock the kind of winsome witness crowd that uses all these accusations against us. I think these have no power over us anymore. These are magic words that you made up that aren't actually in scripture. It's just a strategy. Run your play, have so much fun, but I'm not held to your magic word. So that's my exhortation to you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, this episode is brought to you by Ion Layer. If you are a fan of fitness and mental acuity, you need to know that your NAD plus levels decrease by 50% by the time you're like 40. And so I use these NAD plus patches. They are brought to you by Ion Layer. It's a medical grade patch that you can put on your body, wear for 14 hours. You get cleared by a doctor. They do a quick physical to make sure you're good for it. And it increases your NAD plus levels, which helps you with muscle recovery. I used it after I had bicep surgery, and it helped me recover faster. And so I want to encourage you to head over to ionlayer.com. Use code FPT to get $100 off your first order. These things are already super affordable, and you can get them even for a better price using code FPT at ionlayer.com. 100% money back guarantee. If you don't like it, you can send it back. So it's really a no-brainer. If you're looking to supplement your NAD plus levels, I highly recommend it. ionlayer.com. Use code FPT. Get $100 off your first kit. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.